So, what was the last issue that we were discussing? Alright, so now let me recapitulate. Now we started with the chapters that is testing with balance sheet problem and demonetization together, isn't it? So we completed that part of testing with balance sheet problem. I explained what exactly is the problem and what exactly is the meaning of quill balance sheet syndrome in India. Fine. Now related to the same issue, we actually have to take up another issue which is another chapter in economic survey, that is demonetization. Fine. Look, demonetization, I have briefly given you an idea in my so that what actually was the purpose and objectives behind demonetization. I also very specifically and categorically highlighted that there could be a question in which they can ask you the impact of demonetization as an objective of demonetization, where you need to simply identify and differentiate between the objectives and the impact of demonetization. So I told you very clearly that the digitalization is an impact of demonetization rather than the objective of demonetization. So that sort of questions can easily be asked to you in prelims. Right. Now, taking the argument from there itself, let me again explain that what our issues have been discussed in demonetization. Now, definitely demonetization, as I told you, that it has been appreciated by economic survey in the entire analysis. That is actually the crux of demonetization. But how it has started the entire argument? Look, demonetization, first of all, survey has classified in three aspects. Alright, in three aspects that what actually it means. Now, entire survey on this chapter demonetization has been divided into three aspects. The one aspect is what actually have been the objectives behind demonetization. Alright. Second aspect is how and when demonetization was actually undertaken. So, the event of demonetization. That becomes the second aspect. Alright. And the third aspect is, of course, the impact of demonetization. Fine. So, in these three dimensions, the entire chapter actually has been divided. Fine. So, objectives, event, and of course, impact. So, let me give you the idea about how again objectives were identified in demonetization. I mentioned that day itself that what were the objectives behind demonetization. So, you are well aware of that. The objectives behind demonetization ranging from the black money stoppage to the counterfeiting currency to terrorist financing, isn't it? So, you remember that aspect very clearly. Let me start with this particular event of demonetization. Now, as far as event of demonetization is concerned, of course, survey has actually started giving the reasons that how this event of demonetization has been unfolded on 8th of November 2016, in which the majority of Indian currency, which was in circulation, around 86% of Indian currency, which remained in circulation in the form of rupees 500 to rupees 1000, they were demonetized all of a sudden. Alright, so it was a sudden demonetization that took place in India on that particular eventful night, eventful day, on 8th of November. Alright, the survey explained, but survey also explained why it was taken as a step, under what circumstances the step was taken, that also has been explained very nicely by survey. For example, what survey has done an analysis that how the government of India has got an idea that these two currencies, this 500 or 1000 denomination currencies, are basically used in India for stacking purpose. For stuffing purpose, for keeping it as a, you can say, an idle money, or without making into in circulation. Alright, survey has done some analysis such as on the based of the RBI's reporting. Now, what is the RBI's reporting? For example, RBI has reported that in India there are many form of currencies, like there are currencies in the form of 1000, 500, rupees 10, rupees 20, rupees 50, rupees 100, isn't it? So all these form of currencies were in circulation. But it was surprising for even the RBI that out of all these currencies, only the currencies of lower denominations, they used to come to the RBI as a old and as a redundant currencies. Alright, as a old and redundant currencies which are now soiled currencies. So those soiled currencies used to come to the RBI on a regular basis. Alright, and that too the percentage of more than 33 to 34% that used to come to RBI on an annual basis, those all swell currencies. But the nature of the swell currencies were largely in lower denomination. On the other hand, the other currencies, especially rupees 500, rupees 1000, they used to come barely in 20% and around 11% for both 500 rupees and 1000 rupees. So one thing became clear for the RBI also, that certainly these two currencies, RBI knows these two currencies have been issued by the RBI into the market. Yet these currencies are not coming back to the RBI as a swell currency. It means these two currencies have been stuffed by majority of Indians in our country, maybe as a black money or maybe for the other purpose. Alright, so that reporting of RBI was the eye-opening reporting for the government of India as well. So when IBA reported this thing that swell currencies, out of the entire swell currencies, the percentage of these two currencies, rupees 500, rupees 1000, very, very minimal. So it gave an idea that certainly these currencies have been stuck in India. Alright, so that became a very important reason for the government of India also to actually contemplate an idea of demonetization. And of course, survey has also given an idea that demonetization was not a new step that the Indian government has taken. It has been taken by many of the examples that is there in international experiment or international arena. So many other countries have already taken such kind of steps, and survey has very nicely explained about. There have been some committees also in the past which actually recommended for sudden demonetization. Alright, for example, KN12 committee, this can be asked to you in examination also. Alright, so you are at this particular point. On November 8, 2016, the government announced a historic measure. The government announced a historic measure in the form of demonetization of rupees 500 and rupees 1000. It was a sudden demonetization. It was a sudden demonetization in which 86% of the cash in circulation, in which 86% of the cash in circulation was made invalid, for regular transactions. According to Government of India, the aim of the action was fourfold. The aim of the action was fourfold: to curb corruption, check counterfeiting of currencies, check terrorist financing, and to unearth black money or accumulation of black money, unearth the accumulation of black money generated by income not declared to the tax authorities. Economic survey, next paragraph. Economic survey has analyzed the reasons behind the step of sudden demonetization, behind the step of sudden demonetization under the following points. First point, India has been a highly cash dependent economy. India has been a highly cash dependent economy, and its currency to GDP ratio, India's currency to GDP ratio has been increasing from 9% prevailing in 1967-68, 9% prevailing in 1967-68 to more than 40%, to more than 40% in 2001, and there has been an increasing trend. Despite high inflation in India. Secondly, India is relatively a poor country. India is relatively a poor country, yet the cash in circulation has been always higher than the other countries falling into the category of developing ones. Other countries falling into the category of developing ones, such as Kenya, Brazil, Vietnam, etc. Third point, even Transparency International has reported that higher the cash to GDP ratio, the more incidences of corruption. The more incidences of corruption is found in a society or in an economy. India's corruption or India's level of corruption, in the same point, you're right. India's level of corruption is higher because of the cash in circulation of higher denomination. The cash in circulation of higher denomination. Next point, the most conclusive evidence. The cash in circulation, higher denomination. Next point, the more conclusive evidence. The more conclusive evidence came from RBI on the extent to which rupees 500 and rupees 1000 notes, rupees 500 and rupees 1000 notes are used for transactions on the basis of soiled currency data. Soiled, S-O-I-L-D. Soiled means purana note. Soiled currency data which indicates damaged notes being returned to the central bank. Damaged notes being returned to the central bank. According to RBI, more than 33% of soiled currency notes of low denomination had come to the RBI in 2015-16. On the other hand, the rupee 500 and rupee 1000 currency notes had come in the percentage of 22 and 11%, 22 and 11% respectively to the RBI. 22 to 11% and 11% respectively to the RBI. Thus, RBI concluded that the estimate of money that is not used for transaction, is at rupees 7.3 lakh crore. Thus it is approximately more than 3% of India's GDP. More than 3% of India's GDP. Last point, then the next point. KN12 committee of 1970 recommended for sudden demonetization, recommended for sudden demonetization of rupees 10, 100 and higher denomination notes to combat the menace of black money from the Indian society. There have been some international examples. There have been some international examples of sudden demonetization. International examples of sudden demonetization in the countries like Belgium, Netherlands, Greece, France, Romania, Greece, France, Romania, and even in Sri Lanka. So, question can be asked during prelims that which among the following committee have recommended about sudden demonetization. Alright, there are many other committees which are also there in this entire story of demonetization, but their recommendation was not on the issue of sudden demonetization. Alright, I'll give you the name of the committees. Only this committee had recommended for sudden demonetization. Fine. There are other committees also, you can write it down. Amitabh Kant Committee. Amitabh Kant Committee constituted by Niti Aayog, set up by Niti Aayog. Amitabh Kant Committee set up by Niti Aayog had to form, was asked to form a strategy to expedite, asked to form a strategy to expedite the process of transforming India into a cashless economy. Into a cashless economy, and this committee was also formed in 2016. Alright. So, another question can also be asked during prelims about which among the foreign committees have recommended to the government of India for entering into a cashless economy. Alright. So you need to remember Amitabh Kant Committee is also one of them. Now there are other committees as well. After Amitabh Kant Committee, the next one is now Chandrababu Naidu led Chandrababu Naidu headed high-level committee also constituted in 2016 by the government of India on the transition of Indian economy into a cashless economy. Transition of Indian economy into a cashless economy. Then Wattle Committee, headed by Ratan Wattle. Wattle Committee constituted by the Ministry of Finance to suggest ways to promote digital transactions in India. Digital transactions in India, and the report of this committee is understood, and the report of Wattle Committee is understood as another crucial evidence with the government of India, crucial evidence with the government of India to go for demonetization and promote digitalization of economy. To go for demonetization and to promote digitalization of Indian economy. In other words, to promote cashless economy. Why? This committee had reported, Wattle Committee has reported that cash accounts of about 78% of all consumer payments. 78% of all consumer payments. This was a committee which actually gave a report to the government of India in the month of October. And the reason why in the month of November the resolve of the government of India was very high to go for demonetization. Alright, because this committee gave all the ideas about why in India we are highly based upon cash-based economy, because cash is very convenient to be used by the consumers at large. And in this committee was reported that 78% of the transactions in India that takes place only in cash circulation or the cash exchange of hands from one to another hand. Alright, that's what actually was the observation made by this committee. Now, this committee also suggested, right in its point, this committee also suggested that cash has many advantages. Cash has many advantages such as convenience in use, acceptance everywhere, supports anonymity, that is preserving privacy. Anonymity means privacy. You don't know who is actually giving money to whom. Alright. So preserving privacy, and again supporting the illicit transactions. Make cash a popular mode of transactions in India. This committee also highlighted next point here we read, this committee also highlighted, water committee has also highlighted, because this committee has been explained, at least I would say 5-6 paragraphs in survey has been given on this committee. Alright, so probably a question can be asked to you also on the recommendations of water committee. Right, this committee has also highlighted the challenges to digital transactions in India. Challenges to digital transactions in India. One, India needs special equipment such as POS machines, that is point of sale machines, special equipment such as POS, that is point of sale machines for merchants. Second, cell phone for customers. Cell phone for customers. Cell phone for customers. There are approximately 250 million 250 million smartphone users in India. 250 million smartphone users in India. 350 million with regular. 350 million with regular feature phones. And 350 million people without cell phones. 350 million people without cell phones, which are digitally excluded. Which are digitally excluded. And the last major point water committee has recommended or has suggested, the internet connectivity. The internet connectivity which hampers the concept of e-payment and digital transactions. Digital transactions in the economy. Alright, that is water committee recommendations. These all have been explained by water committee. Coming to next committee is Neeraj Gupta committee. Neeraj Kumar Gupta committee, constituted by the Union Government of India along with RBI to suggest measures for boosting cashless economy. For boosting cashless economy. Alright, so now you see you have got some committees which are actually on cashless economy. The question has to be interpreted very sincerely by all of you, because there would be some question where you will appear that the questions are slightly confusing. Let's asking digital transition or cashless economy or let's say demonetization. So you have to be very, very clear about that in what manner the question has been framed by UPSC and what all committees have recommended what all areas in the past. Fine. Because these all committees have been there in 2015-16 only. For example, this committee was already constituted in 2015. Submitted its report in 2016. So Neeraj Gupta committee is another important committee which many people do not know. Alright. So these all committees have recommended in the past for the cashless economy in India. Fine. So on the basis of all this coming to this report, the government had taken a final call for demonetization. Fine. These are the reasons behind demonetization, the process behind demonetization. Now let us see the impact. Alright, how impact has been explained by the survey. Now the survey has given lots of benefits. You can write it down, the benefits 1, 2, 3 like this way. The benefits of demonetization, the first benefit according to survey is, the first point is tax on black money. Tax on black money. Under this you write, black money in India had to face three consequences. One, declare the unaccounted wealth and pay taxes at a penalty rate. Declare unaccounted wealth and pay taxes at a penalty rate decided by the government. Second, continue to hide it and not converting their currencies thereby benefiting to the RBI and the government of India. Benefiting to the RBI and the government of India. Thirdly, laundering the black money and paying a cost of converting the black money into white. Paying a cost of converting the black money into white. In all this process, survey has finally analyzed the illicit black money has benefited the government in reducing their debts. Recapitalization of the banks, and redistributing of money to the private sector. For further investment in the economy. Next benefit is there is an expectation of a high tax compliance in India. As India is known for a poor tax GDP ratio, India is known for a poor tax GDP ratio that stands at 16%, 16% है tax GDP ratio इंडिया में, 16%, which is among the least performing countries, among the least performing countries on this ratio. Third point, third benefit, tax on informal savings, that is a savings done by the household, for meeting any exigencies, will also be increased. Exigencies means if the circumstances कोई दिक्कत आ गया, emergency आ गया, okay, meeting certain exigencies will also be increased. Next point, it has a profound impact on real estate market. It has a profound impact on the real estate market. Real estate sector thrives on cash-based economy. Thus, the government agenda, of checking corruption and ensuring affordable housing for the middle class, and ensuring affordable housing for the middle class can be achieved. Last point here. Demonetization will also have an overall impact on India's GDP. In the short term, the GDP growth is expected to reduce. In short term, the GDP growth is expected to reduce. However, in long term, it is always beneficial for the economy. Demonetization has three kind of effects, or three potential effects on GDP. One is the supply side effect, what we call supply shock. There would be demand shock and there would be an uncertainty shock also on India's GDP. So you can write this point. Deportation is potentially, what is the third one? Uncertainty shock is potentially an aggregate demand shock. An aggregate demand shock. Why demand shock? Because the availability of money will be lesser with the public at large. So automatically the demand will come down. Alright, so explain this point, write this point. It reduces the supply of money. It reduces the supply of money and affects the demand factor in the private hands. In the private hands. It is equally, demonetization is equally seen as a supply shock to the extent that cash is a necessary input, to the extent that cash is a necessary input for economic activity. Cash is a necessary input for economic activity, especially in agricultural and allied activities. Is a necessary input for economic activities, especially in agriculture and allied activities. So entire agriculture is based upon cash. That's the reason why it will have an impact also on supply side. Fine. Thirdly, that is uncertainty shock. It will have, deportation will have some long-term impact as well. Some long-term impact as well in terms of consumers differing for purchasing new items, because of lack of liquidity, in the economy. However, survey has indicated the same will become a reason of success of the government policy of affordable housing. Government policy of affordable housing for all by lending at a cheaper rate, by lending home loan at a cheaper rate, Alright, so this is how the entire impact has been explained by survey. Fine. So your demonetization is done with these all three particular headings. This is everything that we have that we can actually come out from this entire chapter has been discussed with you. Fine. Nothing is beyond this. So even in mains, if a question is asked about demonetization, you have all the points to actually explain the idea of demonetization. Fine. So So there is one more fact that can be also asked to you in prelims, that which all countries had followed the policy of demonetization in the year 2015-16. Alright, this question can also be asked to you in prelims. Now, it is actually given in your survey, so that's the reason why it is having all the reasons to be asked in the prelims. For example, you can write it down. In 2015-16, there are many countries, but I am simply taking up the recent one. They are not asking the countries of 80s or 90s. Alright, we have given a list of all those countries which actually adopted the policy of demonetization on the page number 79, 80 and 81. Fine. That is the important page for all of you, but out of this important page, what sort of question can be framed for all of you? The question can be framed in the context of the recent years, which all countries have adopted the policy of demonetization. Alright, so simply you can write it down in 2015-16. The countries like Greece, Venezuela, Australia, Sweden, Zimbabwe, Pakistan, and European Union adopted or announced to adopt the policy of demonetization. The policy of demonetization. Out of these, Australia became the first country in the world. Australia became the first country in the world to start full series of full series मतलब हर टाइप की करेंसी 10, 20, 50 जो भी है full series of circulating polymer bank notes. That's what actually is plastic sort of thing. Polymer, P-O-L-Y-M-E-R, polymer bank notes in 2015. Polymer bank notes in 2015 by withdrawing all the earlier currencies. Okay. After withdrawing all the earlier currencies, that was also a process of demonetization in that way. So this can also be asked to you in prelims. Which country actually has adopted the first polymer currencies in solution with all the variations? Fine. These are all facts and figures that are there in demonetization. Nothing is beyond that. Okay, so that's all about demonetization as a chapter. Now I'm entering the next chapter for all of you. The next chapter is on the fiscal system. Alright, and there is fiscal framework. The world is changing and fiscal rules system on the states. Now, this is another chapter from where the question can be asked to you, but let me give you the brief idea about that, what actually are the issues given over here. Look, in fiscal framework and of course this, what you call fiscal rules, nations from the states, the analysis is basically on the issue of FRBM law. Alright, the entire, these two chapters, I mean the chapter number 5 and 6, these two chapters actually has been on the issue of the Fiscal Responsibility Budget Management Act. Fine. Now, in these two chapters, what survey has done? Look, as far as the chapter number 5 is concerned, in chapter number 5, survey has simply analyzed the importance of this fiscal legislation for India and how fiscal responsibility or fiscal prudency has become not only a trend in India, rather in international arena also it is now commonly found. Alright, what is commonly found, survey has actually explained that also. After 2008, because of the global financial crisis, everywhere in the world started witnessing a high degree of fiscal policy, a high level of fiscal policy. Now why? Reason being that of course the lack of liquidity, the lack of demand, that was the major reason behind the entire global recession. So demand, how demand can be pushed ahead? For that, these all countries started following the fiscal policy and fiscal rules and regulations. Here survey demarcates the policy being adopted by advanced economies and the policy being adopted by countries like India, like developing economies. Now, as far as advanced economies are concerned, for example, survey has also analyzed the countries like USA and others, like Japan and all. Like these countries have adopted some different method of pumping money into the economy. Because money availability was a concern, and to address this concern, they all started following some different method of pumping money in the economy. The method according to survey actually has been termed as quantitative easing method. Alright, so a question can be asked to you, what is quantitative easing? ठीक है, ये क्वेश्चन पूछा सकते हैं आपसे प्रीलिम्स में कि क्वांटिटेटिव ईजिंग का मतलब क्या है? फाइन. सो क्वांटिटेटिव ईजिंग as a method adopted by many of the advanced economies in last few years to address the challenges of global financial crisis. But the same has not been adopted by India. So India did not adopt the policy of quantitative easing. Now what is quantitative easing? Quantitative easing simply means the process of ensuring high liquidity into the economy, which means allowing or pumping more money into the market. Alright, more money should be allowed to be circulated into the market, but that has to be done by the central bank of that particular country. So quantitative easing is basically a part of monetary policy of any economy. Okay, it is basically a monetary policy concept where the central bank will decide on the basis of the circulation of money, on the basis of the demand and supply of the money. If money availability in the economy is lesser, then the bank will decide in terms of pumping more money by purchasing securities from the market. So under quantitative easing, central bank purchases security. Question can be asked to you of these lines itself. Quantitative easing pertains to central bank buying securities, central bank selling securities, central bank doing both the things. So if you remember, it is basically buying securities. Alright. So under quantitative easing, the central banks buy securities from the market, and by virtue of that, money is pumped into the market. Alright. And with this, it is expected the economy will start moving on. Now this method has been adopted by even US Federal Reserve Bank. They adopted the method of quantitative easing after having this entire depression or recession there in the economy of US. Alright. But can the same be replicated in India? That's what actually survey has analyzed. After giving this idea, then survey has analyzed that can India also replicate the same model of quantitative easing? Here survey has been skeptical. And given us a reason that why we cannot adopt it. Survey has analyzed that India has witnessed a typical trend where we have seen a high degree of growth, high level of growth, along with a high level of inflation as well. So growth happened, but along with inflation also in India. Now with this sort of trend, of course a central bank like RBI cannot take a stand of pumping money just for the sake of reviving Indian economy or for the sake of giving a boost to the Indian economy. Alright, so in that way, of course RBI is compelled to not adopt this method of quantitative easing. So we cannot adopt quantitative easing because of the inflation, the stubborn inflation, the continuous inflation in the last so many years. Hence, we have to think some other way. We have to think some other alternative that how we can actually keep pumping money. Now once we have accepted that yes, RBI cannot accept this quantitative easing method, and moreover, there is inflation in India, so suddenly RBI will have to suck out more money from the market. And under the entire concept of monetary policy committee, RBI is now bound to suck money out of market. Alright, so that the inflation can be controlled up to a targeted level. Alright, so by that logic, of course there would be no money or lesser money in the market. And at the same time, we are talking about that we need to invest money in the market. Now, under these background, RBI is justified. There is a need to relook into the concept of FRBM law in India. Alright, because what is the problem? Problem is RBI cannot adopt this because this is the problem in India. And because this is the problem, so of course what RBI is doing, RBI is making economy less liquidity, having less liquidity. Now with that, of course, investment will be compromised. It is being compromised in India. Now the second option is the state, the government. The government is bound by the FRBM law. The government is bound by the FRBM law. Now what FRBM law suggests? That you have to reduce your expenditure, or go for fiscal consolidation, reduce your expenditure. So the idea is your market, this is the Indian market, it is neither supported by the RBI nor by the government in terms of liquidity or investment. That's a problem in the Indian economy. Now in this backdrop, the Indian finance minister was facing a pressing challenge in the Indian economy in terms of whenever he used to present the budgetary proposals in our country. So that's the reason why survey has also indicated the committee constituted under the chairmanship of N.K. Singh to review FRBM law is justified. Is justified because then only your economy will have some move. Otherwise, neither RBI is going to pump money nor the government is going to pump money because of this particular law limitation. Then what will happen to your economy? So it means we need to adopt some different strategy. Of course, it was valid the way it was implemented in 2003 at that point of time, but today the time has changed. The law should also change. That is what survey has revised exactly. And survey has justified the constitutional expert panel to review the FRBM law in India. Alright, and once it will be reviewed in the context of the counter-cyclic policy. Alright, so survey has used a word called so India needs to adopt a counter-cyclic strategy or policy. A counter-cyclic strategy or policy is basically a fiscal policy. The difference between these two terms, it's a monetary policy, it's a fiscal policy. Alright? A monetary policy will always be regulated by the central bank of a country. A fiscal policy will always be regulated by the government of the day, the government of in the past. Alright? So counter-cyclic policy is basically a fiscal policy, and considering that aspect, it is advisable for India to go for adopting fiscal policy to tame not only inflation but also to ensure growth in the economy. Alright, so under counter-cyclic policy, what will happen? What happens? The government, depending upon the condition, will release money into the market, and accordingly government will also withdraw money from the market. While releasing money, the government may start launching many of these schemes, programs, or investment, you can say, projects. And while taking away money, the government can also impose taxes, tariffs, and moreover, the government can also start, let's say, buying the securities from the banks, or selling securities to the banks in that way. Alright, so if the government starts selling the G6 or the government securities back to the bank, again the money will be taken away from the banks in that way. So this is the way to again control inflation and as well as what? Boosting your economy. Fine. So G6, the survey has also used the G6 is the best tool for the government to get money back from the economy. Alright. So the moment it will ask the banks to purchase G6, the banks will have to give money back to the government, and hence the money will be sucked out. Alright, this is how survey has done the entire analysis in the very first chapter. But there are some few facts from where the question can be also asked you. For example, survey has given an entire detail about the countries which actually are known for a higher degree of debt GDP ratio. That is sovereign debt which all nations are taking a lot of loans, and which all nations are actually having a high GDP, in which their GDP, the loan contribution is very high. Alright, so that's what actually survey is giving details and a detailed analysis about that also. The entire countries' names are mentioned over here. So a question can be asked to you, prelims: which among the following countries is actually having a high debt GDP ratio in the world? Alright, so India is also among the higher debt GDP ratio in the world, but not the highest. Alright, India's debt GDP ratio is 68.5%, which survey has recommended to be dropped down, which is to be decreased down to at least 60%. Alright, so that's what survey has recommended. Fine, but you have a list of those countries. You can mention that. First of all, you mentioned few ideas.
How it is different from open market operations where government is saying
exactly same thing. It's the same thing. That's open market operation only, because through that only the government can take back the money from the economy. Alright.
एक्ट को तो हम अचीव कर ही रहे हैं. स्टेट जैसे 2012 में इसमें स्टेट को जो है अपने तरीका से डेवलप किया गया और राजकोषीय घाटा और राजस्व घाटा को भी हम कंट्रोल कर रहे हैं, इन्फ्लेशन को हम चेक कर रहे हैं. फिर एनके सिंह जो कमेटी को ये कंस्टिट्यूट किया गया है, इसका हम मतलब नहीं समझ पा रहे हैं. जैसे कि अभी बोले आप कॉन्ट्रीन साइक्लिंग पॉलिसी, ये आप विकसित देशों का है, विकसित देशों में चलाया जाता है ये पॉलिसी. फिर ये इंडिया का है, हमारा दूसरा तरह का चैलेंज है. एक तरफ बोलता है हम मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी, उसके लिए भी हम अलग से आरबीआई के अंदर ब्रांच बना दिया इन्फ्लेशन चेक करने के लिए. तो फिर अभी ये सब करने का क्या जरूरत है?
समझना ये है कि आपके पास अभी चैलेंज जो है, जैसे कि इन्फ्लेशन का एक चैलेंज है, इसके डेफिसिट का चैलेंज है, और एक बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट चैलेंज है वो है इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ का चैलेंज. ठीक है, तो अब आपको सोचना है कि इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ आपका सस्टेनेबल कैसे होगा. ठीक है, जो ग्रोथ है आपका, अगर मान लो अभी की कॉन्ट्रीब्यूशन 7.1% भी है, तो 7.1% कैसे ये बढ़े, कैसे 8 हो, कैसे ये 9 हो, ठीक है, कैसे ये डबल डिजिट में जाए, वो अब आपके लिए एक मेजर चैलेंज है. ठीक है, अब सोचना ये है कि उस चैलेंज को अचीव करने के लिए क्या क्या डिफिकल्टीज है आपके लिए. आपके पास एक बड़ा डिफिकल्टी है कि इन्फ्लेशन को कैसे आप कॉन्टिन्यूसली कंट्रोल करके रखें. ठीक है, एक बड़े चैलेंज. दूसरा है कि आपका जो फिस्कल डेफिसिट है उसको भी कैसे आप बैलेंस करके रखें और कितने तक बैलेंस कर सकते हैं. ठीक है, अब इसको सोचना ये है कि जहाँ तक इन्फ्लेशन का सवाल है, तो इन्फ्लेशन सिर्फ मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी से कंट्रोल होगा या नहीं होगा, ये सबसे बड़ा क्वेश्चन. हाँ, कमेटी बनी थी, मैं बात नहीं करूँ, मैं ये कहना चाह रहा हूँ आपको, इन्फ्लेशन को कंट्रोल करने के लिए सिर्फ मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी ही अकेले काफ़ी है या और भी पॉलिसी चाहिए. तो हमारे कंट्री में सिर्फ मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी के थ्रू हम इन्फ्लेशन को कंट्रोल नहीं कर सकते. ठीक है, पहला सवाल, पहला जो है आंसर ये है आपका. दूसरा है कि तो फिर कैसे करना है हमें कंट्रोल, तो हमें एक हार्मोनाइजेशन चाहिए जिसमें फिस्कल पॉलिसी और मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी दोनों मिल के उसको चेक करें. ठीक है, हमने उसके लिए भी मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी कमेटी बना दी, उनको एक टारगेट दे दिया कि भाई आपके पास ये टारगेट ही अचीव करके चले जाना है. ठीक है, अब क्या है कि आरबीआई उसके अंदर काम कर रही है, उसके डायरेक्शंस के अंदर काम कर रही है, तो आरबीआई को वो सारे स्टेप्स लेने हैं ताकि वो टारगेट को अचीव करते चला जाए. भले ही उसके कारण आपका ग्रोथ हैम्पर कर जाए, उससे आरबीआई को मतलब नहीं, क्योंकि आरबीआई के पास अब जो मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी के अंदर जो दिया गया है डायरेक्शंस, वो एक ही ऑब्जेक्टिव को अचीव करना है. ऑब्जेक्टिव क्या है? इकोनॉमिक स्टेबिलिटी. इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ नहीं है. पहले इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ भी होता था आरबीआई के पास ऑब्जेक्टिव, अब वो हटा दिया गया है. अब एक ही ऑब्जेक्टिव है कि आपको सिर्फ और सिर्फ इकोनॉमिक स्टेबिलिटी को अचीव करना है, बस. अब क्या है कि आरबीआई पिछले 3-4 सालों से जितने भी गवर्नमेंट डायरेक्शन दे रही है बैंक्स को, उसके बावजूद भी जो है मनी का जो लिक्विडिटी है वो नहीं आ रहा है इकोनॉमी के अंदर. इसके बहुत सारे कारण है. एनपीए एक कारण है उसका, लेकिन बैंक्स बहुत सारे कारण के कारण वो नहीं दे रही है मनी आसान तरीके से और सस्ते रेट पे. ठीक है, अब स्थिति ये है कि आपका इकोनॉमी जो है वो डवाडोल स्थिति में है. उसमें अगर पैसा नहीं आया, इन्वेस्टमेंट नहीं आया, तो चीजें और बुरी होती चली जाएगी. अगर साथ है तो कल कुछ ही हो सकता है. तो अब सरकार के पास चैलेंज ये है कि क्या ऑप्शन है उसके पास. एक तो उन्होंने ऑलरेडी आरबीआई एक्ट को अमेंड कर दिया है, एमपीसी बना दिया है. अब वो डायरेक्टिव दे नहीं सकते हैं एमपीसी को या आरबीआई को कि आपको पैसा रिलीज करना है, सस्ता कर दो, कुछ भी कर दो, सस्ता कर दो. तो वो करेगा तो इन्फ्लेशन बढ़ जाएगा, वो एक डर है. तो अब गवर्नमेंट के पास एक ही ऑप्शन है कि गवर्नमेंट खुद से क्या कर सकती है. जब खुद से क्या कर सकती है, जब वो देखती है खुद से क्या करता है, तो उसमें वो उसको लगता है कि अभी एक लॉ है उसके पास, जो लॉ उसको कहता है कि आप एक्सपेंडिचर को कंट्रोल करें। पर चैलेंज ये है कि वो एक्सपेंडिचर को कंट्रोल करें कि एक्सपेंडिचर को बढ़ाए इकोनॉमी में। अगर नहीं बढ़ाएगा तो ग्रोथ नहीं होगा। अब उसके पास एफआरबीएम लॉ है जो कहता है कि आपको कंट्रोल करना है, ठीक है, कंट्रोल कर रहे हैं, 3.56 पे आप पहुंच गए हैं जीडीपी के, हो सकता है हम 3 भी पहुंच जाए, टारगेट है, लेकिन उससे होगा क्या कि आपका इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ जो है वो रुक जाएगा, ठीक है। तो अब इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ को करने के लिए क्या ऑप्शन है आपके पास? या तो पैसा हम पंप करें आरबीआई के द्वारा, या तो खुद से पंप करें। अब स्थिति है कि आरबीआई के द्वारा हम नहीं करवा सकते, क्योंकि आरबीआई के पास हम सब कुछ छोड़ चुके हैं, ऑलराइट। अब हमारे पास एक ही ऑप्शन है कि खुद से कैसे उसको पैसा पंप करवा पाए। उसके लिए एफआरबीएम लॉ को फिर से देखने की जरूरत है कि क्या हम लॉ को वैसे ही रखें या उसको थोड़ा अमेंड करें, या उसमें कुछ बैंड सेट करें। जो एनकेसी को कहा गया है, वो कहा गया है कि 3% नहीं, आप कहिए 2 से 4%, ताकि डिपेंडिंग अपॉन द इकोनॉमी गवर्नमेंट कैन टेक अ कॉल ऑफ इन्वेस्टिंग मनी और पंपिंग मनी इन द इकोनॉमी, ठीक है। अब 3% हो गया तो फिक्स है, तो उतना पहुंचना ही पहुंचना, लाना ही लाना है। अगर वो बैंड जैसे आरबीआई को हम दिए बैंड कि +-2 हो तो कोई दिक्कत नहीं है, तो उसे सरकार के पास में वो बैंड होना चाहिए कि अगर +-2 सरकार को भी हो तो कोई दिक्कत ना हो, ऑलराइट। दैट इज व्हाट एक्चुअली द रिजल्ट चैलेंज, ठीक है। सो आई होप दिस आइडिया इज नाउ क्लियर टू ऑल ऑफ यू, फाइन। सो आप कुछ पॉइंट दीजिए, देन कम टू दिस इशू। Under fiscal framework policy of the Government of India, all over the world, there is a changing trend. To address the fiscal challenges, since 2008-9 global financial crisis. Since 2008-9 global financial crisis. Many countries have adopted quantitative easing method for boosting their economic growth after successfully implemented counter-cyclical policies. Under quantitative easing method, near zero interest rates is implemented to revive the economic growth. Even India also adopted this method. For giving a boost to its economy. India is facing Some typical challenges such as rapid economic growth along with a high debt GDP ratio, high debt GDP ratio with a continuous inflationary trend in the economy. It is particularly under this background, India can adopt either of the two policies, monetary or fiscal, to address the challenges of economic growth. After making RBI a central bank of India, a sole agency to look after monetary policy, and economic growth as an objective will be owned by the government, owned by the government. Thus, India is reviewing the fiscal policy framework. Enshrined in the FRBM Act of 2003. Fiscal policy framework enshrined or given in the FRBM Act 2003. Next paragraph here. Economic surveys suggest that India's situation differs from that of the advanced economies, For example, Indian growth rates are substantially higher. While inflation rates are also substantially greater. As a result, monetary policy is nowhere close to. Monetary policy is nowhere close to address these challenges hence fiscal activism is needed in India. Under this background, the counter-cyclical policy has been proposed by the Economic Survey to address the challenges of Indian economy currently. Counter-cyclical policy is a fiscal policy. Where the government promotes spending or expenditure, during recessionary period or downturn period, and tightens or suck out, tightens credit supply or check credit supply during the inflationary period. Thus, it is recommended that FRBM law needs to be reviewed. As being done by the NK Singh committee. Recently. In conclusion, India has to contain not only inflation but also fiscal deficit. But to achieve both the targets, India should adopt a mix of both monetary and fiscal policy.
India should adopt a
Mix of both monetary and fiscal policy, regulated by the central bank and the government in their own domain. In their own domain. Alright. So that is the concluding remarks of this chapter. Now the fact that is important for a few prelims is the debt to GDP ratio. Which country is having the highest debt to GDP ratio? So IMF has published a report in 2016. IMF has published a report in 2016 named Fiscal Monetary Report, in which the highest government debt to GDP ratio, the highest government debt to GDP ratio is of Japan. Japan is a leading country, alright, where the government pumps more money in their economic activities, alright. Followed by Italy, US and France. India is at 8th position. India is at 8th position at 68.5 which according to survey is higher considering the high fiscal deficits in comparison to other emerging economies. Survey has recommended it to be lower down to 60. Alright, so that is what survey has given you an idea. So this question can be asked to you that which country in the world actually having the highest government debt to GDP ratio. So the answer will be Japan. Alright, that is what actually the issue. Now in the next chapter, that is on fiscal rules, there's nothing much to talk about, but a few things that need to be also understood here.
Sir, इस चैप्टर में नेगेटिव इंटरेस्ट रेट का बात किया गया है क्या होगा? नेगेटिव इंटरेस्ट रेट.
Negative interest is nothing. It's all about कि अगर पिछले साल 4% इंटरेस्ट रेट ले रहे थे, इस साल वो 3.5% इंटरेस्ट रेट ले रहे हैं. नेगेटिव इंटरेस्ट रेट वो हुआ. ठीक है. So now the next chapter is on fiscal rules. Nothing much to talk about here, but only a few ideas need to be communicated, and that is in the context of some examples set by some state governments in India on the fiscal policy. All right. So what this chapter number 6 has analyzed for all of us, that there are certain examples in terms of the states in India which actually have been very, very prudent on the FRBM law, and moreover the states like Haryana and Kerala, they are the path, you can say, breaking states in terms of giving us an insight that these states have been able to tame their fiscal deficit up to a great extent, and beyond, I mean, before even what the government of India started doing it. So they actually, survey has suggested these two states have been pioneer in terms of the fiscal policy prudency. That is what actually being followed today in our entire country. So what it suggests that if you follow the example of even Kerala and of course Haryana, perhaps India will have the fiscal control in a very amicable manner. Now how have they done it? Now they have done it on the basis of two things. The first one, they have invested the money in those areas from where the dividends or returns are actually coming up to the government of those states. Right. Of course, Haryana and Kerala examples have been cited here. That whether they are investing in health, investing in education, So the healthcare education actually has given a result to Kerala, primarily to Kerala, in terms of course, earning a lot of remittances from different parts of the world. And perhaps because of that, the deficits of their states are actually coming down. That's what actually survey has analyzed. Similarly, if you look at the example of Haryana, Haryana also, because of the advanced development of companies coming up in Haryana, the MNCs coming up in Haryana, because of that also Haryana is getting a lot of tax collection. Through that only the deficit of Haryana government has come down. So these two examples of states have been given in the survey, and through that survey has simply talked about that if the same model can be replicated across the states. So perhaps the fiscal deficit as a target for the state government mentioned the FRBM law can easily be achieved. Alright, that's what actually survey has done the impact analysis. However, as far as prelims facts are concerned, I don't consider that there would be any question that can be asked of these two issues, except that it has also talked about, survey has already talked about, that if there is a need to even amend or to change the Article 293, alright, the Article 293 clause 3 of the Indian Constitution, which imposes embargo on the state to borrow money. Alright, Article 293 clause 3 of the Indian Constitution, survey mentioned very crystal clearly and categorically that Article 293 clause 3 of the Indian Constitution stops states to take loan or overseas borrowing without the consent of the center. Alright. Without the consent of the center. Now what survey has suggested? Survey has suggested that, of course, in the wake of controlling the FRBM or let's say fiscal deficit by all the states, perhaps the states will also be entering into the mode of jeopardizing the economic growth of their own state. So here, survey has suggested that there should be a method of the off-take revenue out of budget. Alright, for example, borrowing. Borrowing is an off-take revenue out of budget. So if borrowing is allowed to the states from other, let's say, agencies, perhaps the states will have enough fund to pump their money, pump those money into further development of their economy, of their entire state economy. Alright. So Uday scheme has been quoted by survey. The way Uday scheme is being implemented, or Uday scheme is being implemented in the way the center will keep supporting or let's say financing the power discom companies of every state government.